If you are new to sourdough bread baking and are looking for easy to follow step-by-step instructions, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. During the next few minutes, I'll bring you along my daily routine for making and baking sourdough bread. If you love the almost angel food-like texture of the crumb of sourdough bread and the delicious chewy crust, you've come to the right place. Okay then, let's begin. Since I make 2 loaves of sourdough bread nearly every day, I begin most mornings by feeding my sourdough starter, which has been sitting on the kitchen counter overnight. Because the flour I use to feed my sourdough starter includes some freshly ground whole wheat flour, I keep it in this silver canister in the freezer. My 2-loaf recipe calls for 200 grams of sourdough starter, so I feed my jar, which contains about 50 grams of mature starter, 100 grams of flour, and 100 grams of water, for a total of 250 grams of sourdough starter in the jar. "103, close enough. And now for 103 grams of water. The 250 grams of sourdough starter will sit in this proofing box with the temperature set at 82 degrees until it doubles in volume, which will take 3 to 4 hours. The starter has doubled in volume and it's time to mix the dough. I like to put the water in the microwave for 1 minute, which brings the water temperature up to about 90 degrees. This is my version of the float test. Removing 200 grams of starter from the jar for the sourdough bread recipe will leave 50 grams of starter in the jar just as before. Here is a picture of the shaggy dough after the initial mixing. The dough will sit in the proofing box for 30 minutes until the first stretch and fold. At 30-minute intervals, I'll do 3 stretch and folds and 2 coil folds. During the first stretch and fold, in addition to building structure in the dough, I'm also feeling for any flour that is not yet hydrated. I need more water on my hand. Off camera, I did 2 more stretch and folds and the first of 2 coil folds. This is the second and last coil fold. For years, I've used my 4-quart Pyrex bowl to rest the dough until it increases in volume by 30 to 40% before shaping. However, to more accurately measure the rise in the dough, I've recently switched to using a different container for resting the dough. In this close-up, you can see just how smooth the dough has become. Far different than the shaggy dough it was at the beginning. The dough is risen and it's time to pre-shape, shape, and place the dough in the fridge overnight. I like to use this sifter to place a light amount of flour on my workbench. I use a scale to weigh the dough and ensure both rounds of dough are about the same size. A question I'm frequently asked is how long to rest the dough before final shaping. The answer is, it depends. If during pre-shaping the dough feels slightly overproofed, I may only rest the dough 2 to 3 minutes before final shaping. If the dough feels somewhat stiff and underproofed, I may rest the dough 20 to 30 minutes before final shaping. Today, during pre-shaping, this dough felt perfectly proofed, and I let it rest 8 minutes before final shaping. The dough will now ferment in the fridge overnight. It's the following day and time to bake. The dough has been out of the fridge for 10 minutes, coming to room temperature. I loosen the edges of the dough so it removes easily from the banneton. Using a razor blade, I score the dough with one cut across the top, side to side. The Dutch ovens have been preheating for nearly an hour at 450 degrees. These gloves are a must when handling hot Dutch ovens. I really like using the bread sling to place the dough into the Dutch oven. I usually use two large 5-quart cast iron Dutch ovens with flat lids for baking bread. However, I recently purchased the same size large Dutch oven with a loop handle, which I prefer if I were baking only one loaf each day, or making 2 loaves but baking them one at a time. The bread has been baking for 30 minutes at 450 degrees. Let's see how it looks. Oh my, isn't that bread beautiful? Now back into the oven for 10 to 12 minutes at 400 degrees until the bread reaches an internal temperature of 200 degrees. The sourdough bread has finished baking. The excitement never gets old. Isn't that bread beautiful? Now let's check the temperature. Anything over 200 is good. And both loaves are over 200 degrees. Like any new recipe, I encourage you to follow these instructions precisely. Once you've mastered this basic method, try your own variations by including different types of flour or by adding nuts or fruit. Here is the crumb of the sourdough bread I baked today. And this sourdough bread was baked yesterday. Thanks again for watching. Please remember to click the subscribe button and make it a great day.